Welcome to our monthly roundtable where we give a quick elevator pitch on our project, explain what it is, although we know what each other's project is. So it's basically just for the viewers in practice, and then help each other figure out the next steps or talk about something random that will help Game B in general. So who would like to start? What are our projects up to at the moment?
All right, I guess I can start. My project is Conferati. It's getting harder to describe it because it's larger these days. I guess it's a platform to fight misinformation. Is the quickest way to say it? And things are going well. I've been working with a developer from Upwork to help me sort of expand out the documentation used to explain the project to a developer. I had a meeting with Bentley, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, where we helped solidify what technology was going to be used for the platform. And so I'm working with the developer I'm working with now to come up with a job posting for a Django professional, somebody who's got a lot of experience with that, just to sort of kind of do the whole process again with going through the current specs, with the assumption that Django will be used in somebody who's really hopefully used it for a project like this. So that's where my project is at, is coming up with that job posting.
Bentley, do you want to go next? I'm still writing down all of my projects and more than, or I can stumble through it if you would prefer me to.
No, I just had trouble. Can y'all hear me okay? I'm not sure about my audio. Okay. And I apologize for the dark kind of look, but yeah, I haven't been. The main project I was working on is GullyBot, which is a robot to help a online bot to help society make decisions together on contentious issues by being an intermediary and a place for people to be encouraged to present evidence-based reasoning for us to make decisions together. But I haven't been spending much time on that as a little. I've been playing around a few other projects in the Open Global Mind group. We're working on ways to tell stories using the internet and allow people to kind of choose their own adventure, even though that's a copyrighted term. So that it'll be a story walking you through web pages, but at any time you could stop it and explore that page or links off of it. And then we're also trying to do kind of different ways to visualize. A guy has a brain, Jerry Mikowski. He's been curating a brain for 20 years, and which is just a linked kind of links out to the internet and different topics, and it's a graph of data that he's been curating. So kind of a way to display that in several different ways. And if we don't have anything else to talk about, I could show those two things. But that's kind of what I've been working on recently.
All right, give the update. Solution raising. I'm in the figuring out how to make it into a podcast, but I don't want to make it into like the world doesn't need another podcast. The world needs this specific podcast. So if it's not going to have if it's only going to have a handful full of viewers, have zero interest in it. But if I can find a team of people who can see the value of reaching out to people who are influencers and come with their own audience. And I'm looking into potentially applying for funding through the FTX grant thing project that I sent to Adriel. I don't know if Bentley knows about it. And if I could get funding, then there's room to create an actual app to facilitate a community creating, like how 10,000 people could actually work through an idea to get to that other side. I've been connecting with some people on TikTok, and we're going live every Thursday morning. We just had our first one. We were going to be doing solution raising live on Thursdays, and as this always happens with solution raising, it takes a turn. And now we're possibly going to actually be creating a autistic app, like what would actually empower autistic people. With the two other creators are also autistic, and one of them has a bigger following than the rest of us, which is 14,000. It's not that big for TikTok, but it feels big when you go from really small to that size and overwhelming, and dealing with my journey towards being more comfortable online and offering what we do here, right? That when people have projects, and we created the project of projects because people didn't want to let go of them, and not having the same people go through the same pitfalls again and again. So I'm excited by that, even if I didn't explain it well. Peer coaching, we're still meeting weekly. It's still hard to get people to invite people. So we've been talking about doing a collaboration with future thinkers and reaching out to them because they have the community, but they don't necessarily have stuff for people to participate in at the moment because they're busy in their real life, make a community. And we have participatory stuff and that would benefit their community and our community. So reaching out and finding out how to do that, and or funneling people from autistic TikTok and finding ways to just effortlessly bring people into peer coaching, because effortlessly is how I basically have to do most of it. And other than that, I'm down with talking about what Bentley wanted to talk about, or talking about this FTX funding that might benefit most of our projects. Eric, do you have a project you want to talk about, or you don't have to?
Yeah, my life is kind of my project, but I do actually have just it's only a little bit of fun, really, but I think it might be in alignment with Adriel's project. It was just an idea that came up in a conversation I was having earlier today, like hypocrite of the week, right? Like you find the politician or the public servant or whatever who has really set the standard for being a hypocritical dickhead this week, right? And you know, it could be a fun
That's
thing.
going to be
It's not the
competitive
thing.
list.
It could be like a fun thing that you do as part of your site, something like that.
Yeah, I like that. I think there would be a few popular categories like that.
This probably doesn't work if we're all on mute. We'll just sit here in silence. I wasn't quite clear, Bentley, what it is but I'm down with you showing us what you want to show us and going from there if you want.
Let's apologize for, there we go. Yeah, if you want to share that. Jubilee, yeah, there we go. So like Jerry Mikowski has a brain, has been carrying for 20 years. So you can see it's a network graph. This is not a very good user experience, but this is just saying we could take Jerry's data and show it several different ways. So you could click on useful starting points to understand the brain, and it would add that to the graph. And of course, we need to work on making it to where they actually like come about in a way that you can actually see what's going on. So this is just something we were playing around with. He would like to be able to tell stories with this data as well. Oftentimes he'll record a YouTube video and his interface looks more something like this, where you see this is the main point that he's on, and here are some kind of child points and some points that it came from. So then you can go to like his link on revitalizing cities. And that one probably hasn't been hit in a while, so it's a bit slow to pull it up from the database. And then you can see all of his kind of knowledge on revitalizing cities, which that's pretty big. So you can kind of explore this graph. But it's helpful if he kind of tells a story through it. And he's really good at that. But rather than doing it on video, we'd like to have a way that people could break off from his story at any point or go back to the different parts of his brain where he's doing the story to explore different things that come off of that. Yeah. So that's kind of one thing. But then we're saying, well, if he wants to share a story, maybe that's not just about his brain data. Like if he wants to show Wikipedia. So we have this other we just wanted to put together a quick prototype. So this took like 2 hours last week, where you could put a link in and then say how long you want to wait, and then another link and say how long you want to wait. So you could kind of just step people through something. And then if you hit play, it'll open up a new window, and it has to do that because of browser security. And then it just kind of cycles through the sites. And that's just to show that it's possible. And then later on, we can add it to where it'll play audio in the background describing what's on the page that they're looking at, and then maybe some other ways of integrating all this info. Of course, it ends up on my site, which is very game A. Yeah. So that was just a prototype to show kind of what's possible. Some websites will allow you to put the information in what's called an iframe, so it can display it on the same page, but others won't. So if you had all those type of links, you could have a separate window here that's showing it, and then text they could read. So there's a lot of work. And of course, it'd be good to have a button where you could say, oh, go to the next one, rather than a timing thing. So there's lots of improvements, but we're hoping to find some people that would find this interesting and be able to do a crowdfunding to, make it actually useful. Yeah, so that's some of the projects that I'm working on. Just out of fun.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
speaking
I like the brain thing. That's interesting, seeing like how it, trying to visualize just how all interconnected in information.
I do feel the connections could be darker. It's hard to like. I realize that it's sometimes just the sharing of the screen, but being able to see, and even making them different. Widths based on how connected they are, right? Seeing the ones that are more direct.
And this is just using a default package. And this is just another prototype to get a feeling for what may be possible. Because also in this data, there's an understanding of some of these are parents and some are children. So you kind of want the parents to be higher in the graph and lower. So there's physics in this package, as you can kind of see by things kind of floating around and avoiding each other. So to have the parents kind of go up and the children go down, and there are some in the data that we're pulling this from, there are some different colors to the links, but yeah, having subtle colors and deciding at what points are the lines useful, and at what points does it become just a cacophony of information and they become distracting. If these items were organized like in the other screen, where they're more kind of lined up in sections, then you really don't need the lines at all, because everything above here is a parent and everything down here is a child, and the lines are just kind of duplicative. We haven't really taken the time to work on this this just takes D3.js, which is an open library, and just had to do a few tweaks to make it show that we can, in just a couple hours of work, have something, and then, improve it as we see fit. But it was funny because we kind of built this as a demo, and then they're like, well, the more important thing is, can we tell stories? So then they, that's why I don't want to put too much time in any one experiment, because it usually, very few of those experiments end up being useful. They're useful in the learning, but being useful later than that, after the learning. You just want to see what inspires people, and then take the next action based on that. And a lot of people were pointing out that these kind of node graph things are almost never actually useful to someone trying to explore the data. They look interesting, they look intriguing, and they're a good demo, but making use of that data is almost impossible. There might be some ways we can, like if something has a whole bunch of children, then have it have a longer line, like between these two nodes. It needs to be these two need to be further away, because they both have a lot of child nodes, and then you can kind of see the groupings of the information. But there's a lot of work to make it actually useful. Right now, it's just mostly pretty. Anyways.
Do you think Kylie had mentioned this, and someone posted it in Game B as well, the FTX? Let me just find it and share it. 1 second. Not even on Signal. Signal got closed down. Where did you go, Signal? It's here somewhere. Sorry. I know we can't make things clickable, unfortunately. I don't know if that'll be clickable for those people. I'm going to put it in our... We don't have a group chat, but I think Eric might have gotten it another way before. do we call this one? Just Together Tech. Be projects. I don't know what our group is called to send a link. It's not
In
private chat, maybe.
in Facebook or which? In which?
Oh, there we go. Now it's in private chat, and someone also already put it there. So it seems to be more no string attached. I can't say no strings attached. Less strings attached money that is about creating a playing field that is safe enough for individuals and projects to. They don't want any project that needs under $100,000 of funding. They're looking for projects that eventually will need millions and tens of millions of dollars of funding potentially. And they're looking for projects that have a big picture vision. Like when it's successful, what beautiful world is there? That's not their language. And if it could go wrong, what could go wrong? So and I feel like there's something here. They're funded by the cryptocurrency exchange that has extra money coming in, and are looking for Game B-like projects, it looks like, to do. They have their own list of what they see of as very much needed in society, but I think they're looking for Game B projects. Not Together Tech Game B projects, but all of the individual ones that are part of projects.
Do you know what any of the strings are?
No, Kylie was talking about how, and again, I wasn't quite clear. Maybe Eric was there present as well. Maybe he did, of whether it was her assumption that there wasn't, or whether it was actually laid out, because I couldn't see that. But there's a profit and a not-for-profit route, and if you're going the profit route, then of course there's probably going to be shared ownership. And then what does that shared ownership look like? Is it the exchange? Is it the community? Who actually does the shared ownership? I have no idea. But they're looking to give money to create these spaces like Game B type ideas. I think that's more like they're looking for most of them to fail, which is a good thing to hear, because it's not like they're looking to be they're not being venture capital, right? Where 9 out of 10 are going to fail, but that one's going to be a unicorn. It's like the unicornness of Game B, like looking for the better world as opposed to a return on investment. But they definitely want ones that are going to be more likely to succeed.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to know what sort of strings are involved with the nonprofit money. Like if there's an actual grant and you say up front, this isn't a profit-seeking project, I wonder what sort of,
Kylie was under the impression that there are essentially no strings. If they think it's a good idea, then they will fund it, and there's no strings on the non-profit side. Was the impression I got from Kylie, but I can't say that with any certainty.
That is also, and they literally did say on the website, like they're not micromanaging it. They will offer, it sounds like they will offer support when they can. And I think that if our projects are able to operate transparently live on YouTube, like it's like part of that transparency is whatever strings are attached from that parent company, including none, and that could be a benefit to all of the companies that or all of the projects that potentially get money from here, because there's strings attached and there's also perceived strings attached, right? And so making those things more transparent and just, hey, it's don't do evil. I'm okay with that string. Anything else is literally evil, and therefore I think it's better for the collective to kind of figure it out.
Right. Yeah. If the strings were like you have to, set up the project in a certain way that people are assured, blah blah blah, I would like that. But if it's any sort of direct project control, etc., then
I mean, I would imagine there'd be some obligation to report progress, right? And keep books and stuff like that. I would imagine there'd be those kinds of obligations.
Yeah, which I'd actually be kind of weirded out if they didn't have those kind of obligations. No, I just want this money, and they never ask me about it again. That's suspect.
Because whether their selection process is going to be transparent in how they make those decisions. And like, I feel like there is so room here for like a American Idol type reality TV show of like, here's all the really horrible projects. which doesn't sound very Game B, but is fun for me. It's like, wow, this one was never going to go anywhere. This one's clearly flawed. Like they do with the singing, right? Like they pick people like who think that they're good that aren't because it's entertaining to watch, which is not very kind necessarily, but does add for entertainment value. And then there's the ones that actually proceed and have that talent and value in the talent. And I feel like for projects specifically, there is something there of like, the people involved, what is their track record, not necessarily with making projects, but with keep putting themselves out there. Like, I would rather have somebody who's failed and gotten up again and keep showing up and coming back rather than, oh no, this is the Holy Grail. And then if it fails, they go, they're never going to try again. They're just going to hold on to the Holy Grail anyway. Language skills are off at the moment. I'm going to mute.
Yeah, it looks like they're also linked to or participate in the effective altruism community because they're posting some things in there. Yeah, it looks like I might put Goaliebot into this. I just have to look at it to see whether I'd want to do it as a actual project idea, looking for funding, or they also say, if you're not quite there yet, do an expression of interest form and just tell them what you're going on and maybe open up dialogue. So I don't know if Goaliebot's at the place. I mean, eventually it could take millions of dollars to get off, to fully realize it, but it's not in the place where it's been proven enough to need any of that right now. But I don't think that's what they're looking for at this stage. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, my perception is that they're looking for projects that have the potential for big impact. Well, I don't remember what Kylie said the name of it was, but the the chance of success and the power of potential together is as in an equation where, if you're going to impact 1,000 people, but a tiny bit versus a bunch of people a little bit, the multiplication factor, they might be even. Wow, I can't come up with numbers to make that make sense. But Kylie did in the moment. My brain is.
Yeah, it was something. It was expected value basically was the equation, right? So a 10% chance of helping 1,000 people is equal to 100% chance of helping 100 people, right? That kind of thing.
I think anyone who can actually have the potential to solve misinformation, like your projects aren't everyone needs to use it or nobody needs to use it. At the same time, humanity very much has we need one at least. And if having multiple ones is going to dissipate that, we need trust in information that we do not have right now, and we're seeing the implications of that again and again. Creates the drama triangle.
An interesting thing about that is that kind of decision making processes, like both mine and Jill's project, they bolster all the other projects. So it's an accelerator, it's an accelerant to all the other projects and everything they want to do. And so, yeah, I think it'll fit in. Plus, they explicitly list epistemic institutions, which Goaliebot would be, and Hadriel's Conferati would be. And then in their actual project ideas, they had some that were pretty close to at least Goaliebot and maybe Conferati.
Yeah, I know. When I looked at the list of ideas, I didn't see any direct ties, but I was like, I could maybe position it as that one. But I think that they just sort of have a general catch-all, like other improvements or like project types we may have missed or something like that. So
yeah. I don't think they expect anyone to do these specific topic ideas. They're just kind of suggesting them. So you could say it's similar to this one, this one, this one. And they got them numbered, which is nice. But, then that would kind of be a shorthand for them understanding how it fits into their thinking.
So I just want to flood them with Game B projects. Like, even if only 1 or 2 gets funding, it's like, hey, this is.
Now they mentioned their deadline. I think they said March 7th for their first thing. I mean, I think they look like they're open to things at any time, but they're having a specific competition, so that's 2 days.
I thought it was the 21st. That's much quicker. 2 days from now. Oh, fun.
I saw it somewhere. Is it in their blog?
I thought
Maybe they've updated it.
Yeah, I thought I saw March 14th somewhere, so it sounds like they might have a few dates flying around.
We have a long list of project ideas. So from the blog post on February 28th, they said all submissions must be received next week, Monday, March 7th. But that's specifically for the it's a $5,000 prize, and it's a project ideas competition. So that's probably different from the other stuff.
It's like, I want to submit solution raising of like, we have an idea generator. And just make any idea you want, especially if you have enough community, enough people to start generating the ideas and then upvoting them. Just like, I don't know whether they're meta enough. I don't know if they've been in this field long enough to know, like, whether they are technological utopians to some degree, which I still know I am, but like, we're like, technology will solve it in and of itself. I no longer think that. I definitely no longer think that. It's about technology facilitating our human emotions, our medieval institutions, or our Paleolithic emotions, our medieval institutions, and reining in the godlike technology so it's not owned by the for-profit capitalists. Like, there's a lot of working parts there that need to go meta, and whether they can or not, right? Whether it's about supporting the people who are already doing this work, the projects that have the most chance for success, and the meta solutions that help those projects. You know, the way to find each other, the way to find people to support your project. Because if they can, and having the feedback of what's happening, what's going right, what's going wrong, how do we improve the chances of success without hurting that? Like, we're like, no, it has to succeed, so we keep throwing money at it, versus, no, what's actually going wrong here? How do we fix it?
It's funny when they talk about massively scalable projects that could grow to productively spend tens or hundreds of millions of dollars per year. That's when I think of scalable. I don't think of like scalable and how much you can spend. So that's an interesting use of words there.
That's true.
Usually scalable means it can affect a lot of people with a very little cost. But
like as you bring more people on, it gets cheaper.
Although in their case, just like effective altruists, they have a lot of ideas that are high impact. Like for $1 spent, you can save X number of lives. But there is a cap on how much money they can put into that specific project. So in this case, they're looking for one that has high value for when they're trying to spend their money, as opposed to high scale for efficiency. Yeah.
This is also like, this is being funded through cryptocurrency, which, although I think has a future no matter what, it doesn't mean the exchange has a future. It doesn't mean their way of generating money is going to last forever. And if you have like any money that's coming in, whether it's from venture capitalists or whether it's from your members, or if the funding goes away, your project fails. So to have a project that's designed to scale in that way, and then have the money not get tens, hundred millions of dollars, like a Facebook that isn't run on ads, would cost a lot of money, but it would be very valuable to humanity. And yet they would go away once the funding stopped, right? Or they'd have to introduce ads or a funding model, right, where people are paying. It's different tiers, which anyway, yeah, it's a weird scalable option because they have money that they almost want to throw at problems, but if they're not throwing them at the right ones, they're going to hurt the project as well as future projects. So I feel like we're probably all just watching the FTX website, or Bentley has, because he hasn't seen it yet. So part of my reason for wanting to ask for funding is because this sounds like it's kind of a cool thing. And so my brain might be inspired, probably not in the next 2 days, but in the next week, depending on what the deadline is. Part of that is creating because I want to turn Solution Race into a podcast with influencers coming on. They're bringing their community. And if there's enough interest from their community to fund the idea, it gets made. It's possible to have a matching from the influencer themselves, matching from something like a grant. But what we would need to offer that community is some kind of app, some kind of way for them to work together, for solution raisings to be generated and voting on the ideas, finding your team to have solution raisings with, all of that. Basic, it doesn't need to be super complicated, but something that can be on your phone and desktop. And my question is, with that little bit of information, roughly how much money would I look to create to get somebody, like pay somebody to create it?
I'm sorry, to create the podcast?
Not the podcast, the app that would go with the podcast, right? The solution raising of like not in the beginning, just to figure out what ideas you actually want to create, right? So that find solution. We're talking about human trafficking, and I don't even know who would be on for human trafficking. I'm just gonna say Russell Brand. So I have Russell Brand on. We're talking about human trafficking. His community could also have solution raisings on human trafficking that aren't talking to him, right? They're talking to one another. So it needs to coordinate that, and people need to be able to submit their best idea and upvote them and collect funding, right, for when there's enough people, and have that process be transparent, where then whoever gets that money and is creating that project is able to give that feedback that we're talking about, right? Of like, hey, here's what's going right, here's what's going wrong, here's an hour of us doing a live broadcast every week to update people. It doesn't need to have all that necessarily in the app, but coordinate that so that we can use Reddit, use other things around it, and preferably it be in the app if we're paying good money to have it made. And I don't know whether that's a $100,000 app or whether that's $1 million app or any number, because I don't code and I don't know how.
Well, so the feature set is,
Wishy-washy?
Let me see. So, I mean, when you say have a solution raising, so that would be people getting together live on video and having a discussion following the solution raising format. I mean, it wouldn't be in the millions of dollars for something like that. It would be in, 20 to 60, $100,000, depending on all the kind of like sub features you want to do. I'm just also trying to think of, maybe not being an app, but could be hacked together by a really good virtual administrative assistant using existing tools. And I'm trying to think of any of the features. So the collecting the money would be there's certainly a lot of systems for that, but you have to put a lot more thought into it on are people going to have any sort of guarantee on the use of the money? Are they going to be promising that they'll be giving the money or actually giving the money? And then are you, it's kind of a worldwide project. Are you going to support collecting money from almost anywhere in the world? So like normally you just use Stripe, but Stripe doesn't work in some South American countries. I'm trying to think if there's any features in that app requirement that make it more expensive than usual. I mean, normally for $10,000 to $20,000, you can get a really good usable beta app that would allow you to go out in the market and make sure that people are going to use whatever you built and then build it on from there. And unless there's some technological thing that hasn't been done, but most of what you're talking about has been done before. So, just some sort of suggestion and polling system. And, but you'd need to break it down by event or topic, right? Yeah.
And of course, after all that, thank you, Bentley. My brain literally glitched out every time you mentioned numbers. What was the number? What was the range?
Well, so I think you could get a beta type product for 10 to 20K, and then the final thing, depending on how far down in that feature set you want to go, shouldn't be more than, I can't imagine being more than $100,000 in all in over the time to build it. Yeah. And you might be able to put something together cheaper than that to test out the idea. I'm trying to think if you
One
really
thing you-
need an app. And when we say app, I imagine both website and app.
I'm wondering if there's any restrictions too on what sort of costs you can have around like trying to launch it, like having part of the costs be PR and content, and
Yeah, you
hiring
definitely-
people to do the video
yeah.
production, where then it's definitely related to not just launching the product, but sort of gaining traction.
Yeah,
What use is
I
a
think
good product. If
yeah, you should
if you use
include
it.
all of that, and they should be used to that. I don't think that would surprise them.
I would hope so.
Because it's like a combination. It's like this app to support the podcast. Again, the world doesn't need another podcast, but it does need this one. It's like this is one that actually focuses on solution and brings like the power of an influencer into actually directly affecting a problem and creating the space for a solution. And so yeah, we need to work out like, what do you get for your $10? And it's like a vote 1 in 10,000, like everybody else. And it could go horribly wrong. That's part of what you're here for. Is like the what went horribly wrong. I don't want solution raising to go wrong, although, that's part of putting things out in the world, the podcast or the app, but each individual project that we come up with may or may not succeed, much like FTX's projects may or may not succeed. And it's about $10 not being a huge investment, but if we do something with it, wow. And as we go, we learn through the process of how do we effectively use the money? How do we effectively use the teams? How do we effectively use influencers and create something that's enjoyable to watch and enjoyable to participate in to create crap. I need better business language. Help me make shit. Just fund me, FTX. This is actually what I want to put in. Me. Jubilee's the project. Why is that such a problem? But look at my YouTube channel. No, that sounds like 300. But I'm keeping at it.
I mean, they do talk about funding documentaries as some of their project ideas. So no, I think they specifically say effective altruism. But new publications on the most pressing issues, EA relevant Substacks, YouTube, social media, etc. Fund for movies and documentaries. So yeah, they list that out. So the Jubilee documentary, or it's just your whole life.
It's not really interesting at the moment. Like, I get that. At the same time, it's like, it is more about solution raising and peer coaching and like how to actually, and then maybe looking back, depending on how instrumental I was. Here's all my hours of footage that will bore anyone. I got another YouTube strike from a completely unlisted video that I was like, yeah, something to do with the panini. I was like, how? You're not even watching this. This makes no sense. And I was being fairly careful. I was just reading other people's words from Facebook. It doesn't know the difference.
No.
But that, like, just we can't have conversations with each other. We can't trust what is happening from our governments, from science, from politics is government, but any of it. And we're expected to figure it out amongst each other because they're not going to. Like, they're really not. They're just going to keep doing what they're doing, which is trying to stop us from doing anything that is effective. The big bad they.
Yeah, so I'm looking on here just to see if they do have any other
I actually
deadlines.
Just found one.
Oh, here we go.
Of the project idea entries that's like very much my project. Expert polling for everything.
Oh, is that one of their ones that they want or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I mean, a related one of an epistemic appeals process.
Which I'm
I would
sure
say
they
just
see
both.
the value, like we do, in not having one of those projects, and then it's the one we're going to put, but like multiple of those projects, so one can succeed.
Right. I hope so.
And potentially creating cooperative, what do you call them? Competitions? No, that's the wrong word. Coopetition? Is that right?
Could be, yeah.
Yep.
Confederation of like getting those people together, and so they can help each other with their projects and their pitfalls. That might be outside their scope. They might be a little too game A for like, but I want the next round of funding. I don't want to help you succeed. I'm not really here to solve misinformation. I'm here for the next round of funding. There's also like, it's weird the way that they're looking to kind of continually support projects, because at least my brain's like, right, so do I ask for the amount we need to get it off the ground completely, or do I ask for the amount for the next year? Or do I ask, and then we'll see at the end of a year whether we're successful enough to get the next one? Or you expect, like, how often are you looking for, if you're getting money monthly, I need $100,000 a month. If you're getting money one at a time, then like $1 million, right? Like, it's a very different number. I just made those up. Those aren't the numbers I'm looking for. But other people need to fill the silence so I don't ramble on.
Yeah, I'm just looking for what they want. I mean, we know the topic areas they want in, but they don't really give much of a detail on like required maturity level. So I assume they're looking for all levels in those areas of interest, unless I'm just missing it.
Yeah, I think I've seen them sort of definite. I've seen different spots mentioning sort of different, I guess, as you said, levels of project maturity, because some sort of explicitly said like you and your team and sort of the project plans and that sort of thing. There's also areas that said, but still apply if it's just an early concept idea and you're looking to vet it or something along those lines. So I think, yeah, they support a bunch of different project stages.
Yeah, I should share this with the Canonical Debate Lab as well, and probably Open Global Mind, and because they have quite a few projects that fit in this category. Let's see if they're already aware of it. Yeah, and we could also look at their, like they have just your project idea. Why is this project idea worth listing on our website? Submit. Oh, that's the project list. Sorry, wrong application. Might be interesting to look at their application. Okay, so they ask you which area of interest, describe your project in 100 words, website if you have it, describe what you're doing very concretely, not just goals and long-term vision, but specifically what you're doing in the next few months. They don't give a size for that. The case for your project, and I guess they're talking about the value. And then further materials. How long have you been working on it? What have you achieved so far? Any concerns? Finances? How much funding are you asking for? Okay, so they do ask for that. A budget range. Ask you whether it's for-profit or non-profit. Yeah, it's a fairly big application. It's not the largest I've seen by far, but
How many pages is it?
well, it's a Google Doc form, so screens It's about 6 screens. So 30 questions, 20 questions.
It's like I do want to put just me in there. Just me. And then like the peer coaching we weave and solution raising app. And I know I'm not gonna get funding for just me. Nonetheless, it would be hilarious if I did. They were like, sure, we'll throw $1 million at you just for existing.
Start UBI off.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so on the apply page on that site, I am seeing that there's sort of different pages depending on, I think, either the level that the project is at or your relationship to the project, because it seems like you can just like suggest somebody else's project and says, hey, this sounds interesting, but I'm not them. It's not my project, but go check it out. And then there's that the express interest area. Sounds like if you're excited by the prospect of working to safeguard humanity's long-term future, we'd love to hear from you. Even if you don't yet have a well-developed project proposal, you can submit an expression of interest here. And that one sounds like you won't necessarily hear back from them. We won't be able to respond to every submission, but we'll keep you in mind as we start to fund and launch projects. So I guess if it sounds interesting enough, we'll be in touch. Is what I got out of that.
Yeah,
Do
it
they
hasn't.
have a limit? Like one per clearly a project can have multiple people on it, but how many projects you're allowed to submit from one person?
I don't see a limitation there. I don't think they were anticipating someone like you.
They never are, Bentley. They never are.
Ironically, because I'm a unique specimen in like I literally like 15 by breakfast, but it's not like we're not all doing this. Like we've spawned more project ideas than like actually together tech, like something that's actually collective. I was giggling last time when Daniel was here because but you're helping a lot of people with their projects more than yours spawning, but you still have Gullybot and you still have other ones that you're instrumentally a part of. Adriel has at least 2. Daniel has 2. I have like talk to me next Tuesday. I don't know how many we'll have by then. But I do think that like if someone can find those people and fund them, that is what hopefully We Weave is going to do. But like if these people can actually fund a decent livable wage to support like an artist in residence, like a philosopher, idea, person generator in residence would be awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe we should suggest that as one of their other funding avenues.
Yeah, they have a spot on the apply page that says recommend a grant or investment. If you're looking to, actually, sorry, that one's probably the recommended prize. We'd love to hear recommendations for good prizes aimed at incentivizing outstanding contributions to securing humanity's long-term future.
Well, you could consider it a prize, a living wage for the rest of your life.
In some context, I guess that would be a good thing to receive, sure.
Or at least a living wage for X years, right?
Right, yeah.
For a year or for 2 years.
Like it's weird because we're so into influencer culture. Those are actually not the people that I ever envisioned being the people who would need to receive a UBI, right? Because they already know how to put content out. If you're Joe Rogan, if you're you have the people, you have the funding model. You don't actually need something like this. So if you're well known enough, you probably don't need it. It's the people who aren't well known who like exist in the same space. We all like it's a weird conundrum, but having like a pre-Nobel Prize. You know what I mean? Like not you did the work and it was a great help to humanity. How likely are you to do great things for humanity? And I don't think people who necessarily have a big audience are the most likely. They're just the people with the most eyeballs. They don't have the best ideas and they're probably actually that works against them to some degree. As I feel I'm seeing with both Daniel and Jordan's projects of like some people are there just because they're there, right? And it's like they don't know how to listen to the little girl from Brazil or whatever it was that Jordan used as the example a few years ago. The ideas can come from anywhere. It's like, but we're not designing it to come from anywhere. Anyway, that was a lot for UBI for very specific people. Upvote philosophers and connect the philosophers.
Well, cool.
I'm going to have to go very soon, guys.
All right. Hopefully you won your poker game.
No. It's still dragging on, but I've got a break coming up shortly, and I need to wee and I need to make tea. And I did a break every hour, but I'm really quite itchy, itchy and dirty feeling. I'd really like to jump in the shower. I didn't mean for this thing to drag on for so. I didn't mean anyway. Whatever. I didn't realize it was going to drag on for so long.
I think you mean the poker or us?
Yeah, I did pretty well in the early stages and a big pile of chips and so. Anyway, whatever. I've got an option. It's going to be a really long tournament, but if I can survive, I've got a possibility of winning some big money here. So I don't just want to give up on it. You know what I mean?
Got it. Thanks for coming in and dropping in.
Yeah,
Eric.
it was nice to see you. Nice to see you. I'll drop in again. I didn't realize you only did this once a month, but I'll drop in at another one, and hopefully you'll have more of my attention.
All right. Bye, Eric.
See you next time.
See you guys later. Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
There's possibly something in. I didn't realize poker is a whole thing, but like a poker tournament, right? Tournament style of like getting together, talking about your projects, and picking which one is has the most potential, and upvoting it and having it be different. Anyway.
Yeah, and then I have a version of Gullybot that's a competition where both people are throwing in facts to try and win. That would be... Yeah, and then I got to figure out which version to pitch them. I think maybe I'll pitch them the idea of just having a multi-person evidence-based decision-making process and then list out all the different uses, like, competitions and using it to choose leaders and to make decisions on policy decisions and to have people to remove misinformation or reduce the impact of misinformation, because you have someplace you can go that actually has everything as opposed to just one side's, opinion. Because nowadays you can't really go in a single place and find a really good in-depth. I mean, you have procon.org that lists like 10 points on each side, but that doesn't help because then you just feel powerless. It's like, I need to know which of those points are right and which are wrong and why.
Yeah, I've also found that on any site where you're trying to have 10 on each or 5 on each, in some arguments, you're really stretching that as that counts as an equal argument to even 8 of the other ones.
Right.
Sometimes you can tell they're really struggling to come up with them, and the two sides are not equal at all.
Yeah. So I'll give some thought. I probably will apply sometime before their 27th, and that's just for the first round of funding. That's not. I think they'll keep it going. So.
No, I mean, if they have a way, if they're bringing in a lot of money and they want to put it into powerful ideas, I mean, that's awesome. And I think that as long as there aren't horrible game A strings attached that we're not seeing, it looks to be. And the more that together we can hold each other accountable, right? I don't necessarily care about strings. I care about non-transparent strings and perceived strings. And that's where the Google money, IBM's money, I'm like, even if it doesn't come with strings, even if you're giving it full out and you just want me to put an emblem in any of that, your money's tainted. Not that this money isn't, right? Because it's coming from crypto, which is just weird. It's not necessarily scammy. FTX, I'm guessing isn't. I'm guessing it's actually, you need, it's the higher level crypto where you can't just list any coin. But nonetheless, it could be fly by night. It could be something that's just got the zeitgeist right now. So get in now. Get the first round of funding and make it go away.
Which seems like an interesting sort of, ending point for the funding that you request is here's what it would take to get me to a point where the project would be self-sufficient and making enough just income for itself, and also what would they consider as doing that but not being profit-based? If it's we're trying to make money but only for the project itself.
Well, they do also fund they do also fund profit projects. So for them, they don't care.
Right. But I guess to separate there's some projects that are for profit and they're for personal profit versus they'll generate money to fund the project itself, but like no one's trying to get rich off this.
Yeah, I don't think that they care about either of those. If it has a positive benefit, I don't think they care if you end up being as rich as Bill Gates or Elon Musk.
True. I can say though, as not somebody with billions of dollars to invest, I'd want to know that for projects. Like, oh, okay, so these guys do have a business model. They're trying to make money, but they'll set things up in such a way that it's not just them. If it's a great idea, it might be something that I'm like, only if you promise to never sell it to Google, Amazon, etc. Which theoretically you could do with a for-profit project. That I'd be like, I don't want to fund it then.
Yeah, I think they have less strings on their funding than you do. But from what I've read.
Yeah, true.
But I don't think that applies to either you or I. So
Right.
Cool.
Are you planning on putting in your stuff, Adriel?
Yep. And I was also thinking about doing multiple.
It's like I don't know if I can even do one, let alone multiple, which is why I'm like, can you just give me money?
Yeah.
Here's what we've up to. Like I realize, no, we can't. No, we're not going to. It's
also interesting because like with the underlying platform, there's a lot of apps that it is supposed to power. So like if any of them are worthy of funding, that sort of pays for the platform and then focus on that app. So if I could do wiki election, if they say, yeah, we want the IND for politicians, great. Half of that money might just go into the platform to support it, and then half goes into that actual, that marketing and getting those members that are interested in a political lens, but that would still go into the platform overall.
I guess also a quick, not that you guys are going to know because neither of you have a podcast, but to run a podcast, right? I literally can just show up and be on video. I need someone else to coordinate the person getting there, coordinate all of that, coordinate the actual editing of a podcast, which sometimes is just cleaning up the audio. I'm guessing that's a team of 3 to 4 people. I'm guessing it's not a ton, but maybe I'm wrong. And most podcasts, like my guess is even Joe Rogan doesn't have more than 3 or 4 people working. You know what I mean? Even though it's like millions of listeners.
Yeah, I think a highly produced one does. Oftentimes, an editor can service 2 or 3 podcasts at a time. But then that is a different person than what you were talking about, Jubilee, more the executive producer that's finding guests and organizing schedules and figuring all that out. So there'd probably be at least, 2 people other than the host would probably be sufficient.
Yeah. And I guess depending on what you're like, what level of quality you're expecting from the series, I think that would change on, is this a full-time person or is this like 10 hours a week?
Yeah.
You could probably swing it either way. It just depends on what all,
I do feel like if we're having Russell Brand and Muhammad Yunus and people like big names on there, then it needs to be high quality for people to listen to. Like clearly I'm okay putting out content that's just about the content and not about it being entertaining, but the whole point of this is to like use influencer culture to create stuff that's game B. Therefore, it needs to be highest quality level podcast.
And you say podcast, would it also be video or just audio?
Probably video, being me.
Yeah. So then if you wanted it high quality, then you also have to have, depends on how high quality, but you could go as high as camera people and audio engineers and lighting. And that could be all one person or it could be separate people. So then you're talking about, you're making a television show, an interview television show. You're making 60 minutes or whatever. Then, that could be 10 to 20 people if you really wanted to. 10. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the main thing I'm hearing there is that the difference is if you want to have them all in the same location or not, where you can sort of control the lighting and the staging and all that. Or is it, if there's 4 people, you're worried about 4 different people's setups and their lighting and their camera quality and their audio.
Right, which I'm this is a bad assumption, but I'm assuming people who are influencers like Russell Brand, like even Muhammad Yunus, either have like they already have microphones, they already have the stuff that's good enough. Like we're thankfully during 2020 we learned how to do things remotely. We don't, you know what I mean? I don't even know if Joe Rogan, I haven't seen, like, I think he still has virtual guests, not in person in studio guests.
I think I've seen him in person recently, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think he has had a few episodes at least though where the person has
Yeah.
been remote.
If you want a high quality remote, you often will hire out a video studio in the town that the person is at, and then you would hire staff, so they have video producers and stuff that would be there and handle filming their one side. So that's pretty common. So that might be a good way to do it.
That makes sense. For some reason, I was picturing them like just mailing microphones to people and then getting them to mail them back. And I was like, that's clearly how that works. That makes much more sense.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you call the people local to Chicago and they go and do it. And yeah, so they probably take the mic with them when they leave, or
yeah,
the person has one. All right, well, past the hour. We can say goodbye to YouTube and Facebook and see you next month, April. I don't know what date that is. The first Saturday.
Yeah.